Hello, 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 hello. Hello, good people. Hello, good people. I am Tigress Sydney Acute McDaniel, your candidate, your best candidate for blank. If you've seen the change in my bio on all of my social media, that's how it reads, because I am your best candidate for any position I vie for. Vie as in run, compete, file candidacy. All right, so let's see here. Join me. I believe that I can see all of your comments live. Give me 1 second here. Yeah, I can see comments. And I'm going to also bring up a screen where I can see how you can see me. Let's see here. 1 second here. Yeah, I can see comments. And I'm going to put this on. I'm going to also bring up a screen where I can see how you can see me. All right. And I can see the live chat, but I have paused my live feed so that we won't hear that effectual duplicate voice recording. Okay. So a lot has transpired since I last informed you of where my election protest stands. It is unsurprisingly disappointing. All right. My original protest was filed on May 26th. Now, please be mindful that I am going live on Facebook right now. I am not going live through Zoom, and that's the format that I use to screen share and show you a lot of the documents with a split screen or a full screen share where you'll just see a little video of myself. That said, you'll be able to see some of the documents. I can hold them, to the screen for you in real time. Know that at my website, all of the documents are available in downloadable PDF form. Excuse me. Woo. Allergies are great right now. And Asa's getting cereal. Asa might as well say hello, but just don't get it on the camera. So that's the noise that you hear in the background. He's getting cereal from his snack bar. If you follow us on YouTube, then you know that his snack bar and the kitchen is right over there. Okay. So I am going to show some of the documents on the screen. But again, I must reiterate, if you want copies, it's all public information. And even when it's not, I'm an open book, and delightedly so, because I feel that what's going on, y'all? What is going on in this world right now? What is going on that we are okay with? I'm befuddled. I am. I'm not disillusioned, because disillusionment, it implies discouraged. I'm not discouraged, but you may hear me say things that have more of some may perceive them as a skeptical, realist point of view. And that's not the case at all. But I feel at this point, maybe people need some jarring statements. The pacifying, spoon feeding statements to would-be voters and, the general public does not seem to be really working. Or alternatively, it's working and people just, maybe they're disillusioned, they're discouraged. Maybe they just feel like they know that there is laden corruption in our politics at the local, state, and federal level. But they don't feel that they can actually affect change. And so they're just in a YOLO type of mentality. Maybe that's the case. And I understand that in one regard. But I've told you for years and years that all we need to do is just vote in masses. And it's all about legislation. That's what is the major driving force of every play on the field. So, okay. Let me get through this because it's been a full day. It's definitely been a full day. So back to what I was saying. I filed my original election protest on May 26th. Well, sorry, on May 19th. Listen to me. I filed it on May 19th. If I had filed it on May 26th, it would have been untimely, statutorily, right? Okay. And the reason being is because it must be filed by the second day after the election or before canvassing within that second day period by 5 o'clock on that second day. Okay. So I filed this on May 19th. What you're seeing is my amendment after my preliminary hearing was held. The board members were clearly moved by implicit bias against me. Actually, it wasn't even implicit. It was overt, very wanton. It was very interesting. Very, very interesting. Especially considering the fact, as I've stated in my post, that I was not taking any digs at the board members themselves, nor at the Board of Elections either. Instead, this was about the tortfeasors, and according to the statute, they would be also deemed criminals because election influence is a felonious offense. It is a felony, right? So I was making accusations about those individuals who are not board members, but it was as if the board members were upset on behalf of those tortfeasors or potential criminals who would be liable for election influence, to the extent that they were on their side. Because it was just odd that they would take such a strong disposition against me, considering the nature of my protest, having nothing to do with the count. You would think then that they would just handle my protest objectively. The fact that they handled it subjectively, inherent in that, was clear bias against me and favor for these individuals who were the accused in my protest. Honey? So on that preliminary hearing, or during that hearing, one of the board members, unnamed, I'm not sure who she is. I'll get verification of that in this upcoming hearing on Friday, August 5th at 10:30, which is a public hearing. So you have every right to be there if you would like to be there. Of course, they will probably assert that there are some capacity issues if there are too many people that show up. I don't know how many people are following my protest. I'm not really sure how many people will show up. I'm just making sure that on my end, I am transparent and am doing everything by the book. And if you know anything about me, and you hear my sinuses, you hear I'm nasal. If you know anything about me, you know this is exactly how I roll. Okay? So, and it's forever date stamped and recorded in the cloud for proof. Truth, proof, right? All right, so during that hearing, this person, one of the board members, she who purported to have her Juris Doctor, we had exchange of words, which I thought was very interesting. If you, again, did not see my comments on that, she referred to the fact that she relied upon the advisement of the city attorney. And I let her know that my Juris Doctor will not be in reliance upon any other attorney. Each attorney should be able to interpret and understand and apprehend and be able to demonstrate full understanding of the complexities of law, especially as it relates to the fact that she is a board member of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg or the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections. It's just odd that she would not. Okay. Is what it is. I'm pretty sure they will come up with something to say, to explain that fact away, that she's not required to have any expertise in elections law. Okay, great. That makes sense why you're there. Makes sense. It makes sense to me. Does it make sense to you, Charlotte? Okay. So, nonetheless, relying upon the city attorney, she said that she was dismissing or made a motion to dismiss my election protest for lack of evidence. And that motion was seconded. And then I interjected and asserted my rightful opportunity to amend, at which time she then purported that I had no such right, and I referred to the statute, at which time another one of the board members, a male, he interjected and said she is right about that. And so they conceded, gave me the opportunity to amend. Excuse me, I'm so sorry, I'm very nasal. Gave me the opportunity to amend my election protest. And it was basically just for attachment of additional affidavits or an additional affidavit going into further detail. It's a preliminary hearing, and based upon the information on this required form, let's keep that in mind, this required form, then inherent to this required form is that nothing that would fit on this required form would ever seem to meet the standard that they were seeking to establish or to assign to a valid election protest that should proceed, on the merits, quote unquote, or on the facts, because it's a short form. It's a short form, people. There it is. There's the area. And again, this is the form that is required statutorily to perfect an election protest. So nonetheless, I went ahead and I added on a record an actual affidavit. And you see that there. And notice again, it was date stamped May 26th. Again, all of these documents are available at my website. This affidavit was quite long, about 15 pages. Okay. Or, I'm sorry, let me make sure. I had doubles. admittedly, I did not add page numbers to the affidavit, nor was it required. But it was about 7 pages long. Okay, so, and again, despite the affidavit including my properly asserted claims, of my direct observance of election influence, having experienced directly the defamation of my character, my religion, and a number of other things. That is all included in that affidavit. And despite that being direct information of my direct knowledge, again, this same person who was grossly unfamiliar with the election laws, and a lot of law in general is based on the same framework. So the amendment, the same procedural underpinning for civil and criminal. So an amendment to any type of complaint is normally very basally procedural. So she should have at least surmised that it was valid in some statute, but nonetheless, it is what it is. So she then argued that it was hearsay. Now, the entire affidavit, people. Now, admittedly, there were paragraphs, and when we refer to paragraphs in law, it just means that when you're enumerating your points, your claims, so each one would then be referred to as a paragraph. Let me get to the right side. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs on this page. Well, yeah, 4. And then a subsection A and B. So they're admittedly out of 5 paragraphs, the last one having, 4 paragraphs, the last one having subsections A through P, and again, with direct statements from me. And again, you can access this online very easily. And it says, I did capture photographs and social media contents to submit as evidence to further substantiate my protest. I did observe physical construction impairments and impediments that did impede the right-of-way for oncoming voters in the disabled and elder communities. So these are not hearsay statements. Admittedly, as I started off with my adverb, what I was referring to is admittedly, I did refer to the witnesses that I would assert or present to further substantiate my protest. And so I believe that she dismissively read through my affidavit, and otherwise she and Edward Yeager, which is the city attorney, who evidently they relied upon because he drafted the order of the Board of Elections and then corresponded with me so I could get that order and then appeal it. And we're getting ahead of ourselves. But the point I'm making here is that evidently she herein lies the irony. The arrogance behind her Juris Doctor and her license, right? But she's relying upon the city attorney's understanding, right? The city attorney's acumen. And furthermore, she is asserting somehow that aside from relying upon him, that she's going to unilaterally decide that this entire affidavit is hearsay. And it's very obvious that she's not thoroughly reading. It's very obvious that she dismissively read through it because, again, I've shown you just 2 of the subsections that state direct information that I have. And none of it is mere hearsay. Here's the caveat. So everyone always thinks that hearsay is inadmissible because that's what we generally know. The general public has the assumption that hearsay is always inadmissible. That's not true. Yes, generally, hearsay is inadmissible. However, there are a list of exceptions. You all would have heard me say this. If you follow me, then you've heard me use this term before. The exceptions are typically, and they should, they are immediately after the text for the initial purpose of the law. So hearsay is inadmissible, except in these cases. And there are lots of exceptions to the hearsay rule, is what it is called. So the point I'm making is that, and we're not going to be on here very long, and I'm not going to get into, it's not going to be a full-on legal education workshop today, but just know that there are exceptions, and you can very easily pull them up in your North Carolina General Statutes. You can Google them. The hearsay rule is Googleable, honey. And you can Google and you can find all of the exceptions to the hearsay rule. If you, of course, want to make sure that your source is verifiable and reliable, then go through the Legal Information Institute with Cornell Law. It'll come up in your Google search. Just trust your girl, okay? So it's there. So the point I'm making is that none of what she says holds water, or what she said held water at all. It was very obvious that she was obfuscating, which is a word that you've heard me use a million times, and ignoring what was buried in the statute. That is the phrase that a lot of you who know me best or have been around me and know the legalese, then you know I have said that it is buried in the statute. And the exceptions are not generally buried. I just say that because the irony is that it plays on, there's a colloquialism that if it had been a snake, it would have bit me. And what they're referring to is when you're looking for something. Let's say, I'm looking for my pen. Can't find my pen. My pen is sitting right here. And as soon as you see it, you say, if it had been a snake, it would have bit me. If the exceptions to the hearsay rule were a snake, it would have bit her. Okay? That's the point I'm making here. Good gracious, tell me in the comments, are you having issues with your seasonal allergies? I definitely am. I have taken my allergy medicine but it is time to re-up, and I thought I would be okay to go live and then take my allergy medicine. But you know what? Here's another fun colloquialism. What? Hindsight is 2020. All right. I think there's some funny TikToks about that because of the juxtapose to the year 2020 that we experienced. All right. So moving forward, though, basically at that juncture, when she made a motion again to dismiss my election protest after the amendment, which would have been on or about May 26th, right? I believe it was held June 5th, I believe it was. At that point, the next measure of relief for me would be to appeal to the State Board of Elections, which I did. And I was referring to Edward Yeager, so now we can rewind and go back to that moment, or pull that moment to this real-time moment. And I had to wait for the order, which is per the statute. They draw up an order that basically, states what the Board of the Board of Elections decided and on what basis, which is little to nothing. Again, the order is also online for your viewing convenience. And at that point, with the order in hand, I then emailed, because I requested Edward Yeager's email address so that I could get the order in a timely manner and make sure to present it with my appeal to the State Board of Elections. Okay? They also have a form. This is where it gets really, really interesting. So again, if you've seen my post, then you know that I have a storage at Extra Space Storage on South Tryon. And as it were, Building 5, where my unit was, experienced a pretty massive fire. Evidently, it was like 90 some firefighters and so many hours it took them to put that fire out. I have not had access to my unit since that time, and it seems like almost 3 weeks at this point. My files are stored in that unit. I do have some files with me, as you see, but I have multiple files or binders. Those of you who have followed my business consulting paradigm and workshops, you know that I strongly encourage the organizational system using binders. And I have binders, and I have multiple binders for my political aspirations. So, I could not reproduce the form. And what I did is I went ahead and just filled out another one, because the law does allow for that when something has been destroyed. That is permissible. Actually, that is that's also with regards to those exceptions, with regards to when an original copy is required for evidentiary basis. A copy is sufficient when the original has been destroyed or misplaced or cannot be located, and validly so. Okay, so of course they could argue against that, and of course they did argue that I did not submit the original form, but I have the email that I sent to them, and they received the notice of appeal that was sent to them by email. I sent everything else by mail, and they are purporting that they have not received my notice of appeal. The part of this that just really takes the cake, we'll use another colloquialism, is again the express fact that I emailed it to them. So whereas I may have sent the entire packet by mail, I have the record of the email, and that's what I submitted to you all. And not only the record of the email, but the record of their responsive email acknowledging receipt. So, you tell me. And so their attorney, I believe Paul Cox, he would have to be with DOJ because it's state at this point, right? So he would be with the Attorney General, Josh Stein, and that office. And I just thought, well, that's very interesting. That's very convenient. So, even though I'm not a candidate, or wasn't a candidate, in the July 26th general election for the mayoral race, I was a voter. And I voted for myself. I wrote myself in, and I voted for no one else. But that vote, casting that vote, gave me privy. It entitled me with the privy and the legal standing is what it's called. So that means if you are not a voter or a candidate in an election, you don't have legal standing to protest it. Okay? And it's kind of like when people say colloquially, if you didn't vote, then you can't say nothing. The irony is that legally, that's exactly what's at play. But of course, I voted. And so then I asserted my legal standing to reassert my protest and allege additional claims against the individuals who are liable for election influence. That was filed on July 27th. Okay, right there. This time, I not only submitted it to the county board, I said on this entire journey throughout this process, this go round, everybody will be included. Everybody will receive a courtesy copy at every step in this process. And so I sent copies of this protest at the county level right now. I sent it to the entire board for the state board of elections. So their email addresses are conspicuously publicly promulgated on the website, ncsbe.gov. And I sent it to all of them, as well as Paul Cox, the attorney, to Edward Yeager, and to, of course, the county board officials, or at least to those for whom I have an email address. So they all have it now. Yeah, they all have it. So that's where we're at. One other last point to be made. They failed to properly notice charlatans, which I have asserted in a more articulated manner on this new election protest form that the charlatan registered voters and charlatan residents are the affected parties and thus entitled to notice. The first go round, they affected service in a manner called sewer service fraud, if you will. And basically that all that means is that a person who is who is responsible or enjoined to carry out service upon the parties who would be affected, they do it in such a way that the parties who really need to know would not have reasonably known based on the way that they conducted service. And hence the term sewer service. Like you're doing the bare minimum, or not even the bare minimum. You're doing it in such a way intentionally. There's a knowing element of sewer service fraud, if you will. So they posted, and when I say the county board posted that there was a meeting on June 5th. And I believe they did something similarly no, they did not for the first one. Only after I raised the issue that they had not properly served notice did they finally put a notice of just a public meeting it was completely void of details on the government website. We clearly know that that's a knowing act to conceal the fact that there is an election protest, and that's a problem. So this go round, I reasserted the fact that they had failed to properly notice affected parties before, and that I would anticipate that they would properly serve notice this go round. That's what you see as my now profile picture for my Facebook campaign page. And it now shows that there is an election protest and that the preliminary hearing is on August 5th from 10:30 until 11 a.m. So that's where we're at. And the laugh is admittedly signifying of, how should I say this, both disgust with the way that these officials have conducted themselves, the arrogance behind it, the arrogance to the extent of touting this attitude that your protest is not going to matter anyway. It is not their decision to make in that regard subjectively. And that actually disqualifies them from the service that they are in. It's just very concerning. So the laugh is far from a laughter of joy or humor, and instead it is just absolutely ridiculous what we have been subjected to as voters and residents of Charlotte. I'll leave with this. Join me if you can on Friday. I do not expect them to do the right thing. Nonetheless, they are enjoined to do the right thing. and I will not tolerate anything less. You all have a wonderful evening, and I will touch base with you again on Friday sometime after the preliminary hearing and update you on the outcome and next steps. Please forgive and pardon my nasal situation here. I am going to go and have myself some hot tea and get my life in order and rest from the full day. And I'm believing that this video finds you all well, in good health, good mindset, and hopefully in even the least bit encouraged through the efforts that I am making to hold our officials accountable for preserving a just democracy. Our elections cannot be bought. We will not tolerate it. Have a good evening.